People used to call us the steady couple. The friends who never fought. The parents who showed up for every recital. Every parent-teacher meeting. Sometimes I believed it myself. I'd walk into a room with my husband, Daniel, our hands intertwined, and feel a quiet satisfaction like this. Surely is what success looks like. Stability. Partnership, purpose. We weren't wealthy, but I liked the way we made ends meet together. I kept a neat ledger in my notebook every Sunday night. Groceries, mortgage, a little set aside in our daughter Lucy's college savings. That account was my pride. I'd tell Lucy, half teasing, "Someday, this will buy you freedom." She'd laugh and call it her escape fund, and Daniel would ruffle her hair, saying, "She'll never need saving. Not with us." Back then, I believed him. What I didn't know was that every compliment, every reassuring smile, was a carefully folded napkin over a growing stain underneath. Daniel had always been charming, the sort of man who could sell umbrellas in a drought. His coworkers adored him. Neighbors waved from driveways when he mowed the lawn shirtless. I laughed about it, pretending not to notice the admiration in their faces. I figured, if everyone likes your husband, you must be doing something right. But soon, little things began to feel off. Business dinners ran later. Emergency meetings appeared on weekends. He started carrying cologne in the car and keeping an extra shirt in his office. When I asked about it, he smiled the way people do when they think you're being silly. "You worry too much, Mara. I'm building a future here. For both of you." It was hard to argue with that. He was, after all, providing. The paychecks arrived. Bills were paid. The college fund even grew a little each month, at least so the online statement said. And whenever doubt crept in, I'd look at Lucy, sitting cross-legged on her bed, explaining algebra to her stuffed penguin, and I'd think, this is enough. We are fine. Still, the absences turned quieter, heavier. The last family photos we took, at the park near the lake, show it clearly now. Lucy smiling, me clutching her shoulder, Daniel standing half a step apart, his eyes somewhere else. In that frozen instant, our family looked almost perfect, like a brochure for suburban happiness. Almost. One evening, he came home with a new watch. An expensive one, the kind that glints arrogantly under the kitchen lights. I noticed, but said nothing. We had just finished dinner, and Lucy was in the living room building a Lego tower. Daniel leaned back in his chair, talking about a client dinner next week in the city. He caught me staring at the watch. "Bonus gift," he said with a grin, holding it up so the second hand sparkled. "Oh," I managed. "Congratulations." But that night, lying in bed, I watched the light from the hallway catch on his wrist as he scrolled through his phone. The glow wasn't flattering. It made his face look hollow, unfamiliar. Something in me twisted. I wanted to ask questions, but fear of the answers kept my mouth shut. I told myself he'd always been ambitious, that people change after a decade of marriage, that maybe I was just tired. Mothers are always tired, so I clung harder to the story we'd built, the picture frame version of us, because admitting the cracks meant watching the entire portrait crumble, and I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. In the mornings, we still looked like a happy family. Breakfast chatter, half-kissed goodbyes, Lucy's laughter echoing down the hall. But as Daniel pulled out of the driveway each day, I started noticing things. His phone lighting up with a message just before he turned the corner, the new scent on his shirt, and the way he never quite looked back through the rearview mirror. The perfect family, I learned, can hide a perfect lie. And sometimes that lie wears your husband's smile. It started with a number that didn't look quite right. Saturday morning, sunlight slicing through the blinds, coffee in one hand. I logged into our joint savings to check the monthly transfer. I wanted the comfort of seeing Lucy's college account creeping upward like it always did. A small digit of hope. But instead of 15,600 and change, the screen showed 15,600. No comma, no zero at the end, as if one digit had quietly slipped out the back door during the night. I blinked twice, refreshed the page. Same result. For a moment, my brain performed minor miracles to explain it away. Bank glitch, misclick, quarterly fee. Anything but what my stomach already suspected. Daniel was humming in the shower down the hall, oblivious. The smell of his new shampoo floated through the door. Sharp, expensive. I told myself to wait until breakfast, ask calmly. Yet when he emerged all steam and smiles, the words stayed stuck like coins in my throat. Instead, I slid toast onto his plate, pretending everything was fine. He thanked me with a peck on the cheek. "You're quiet," he said. "Just juggling bills in my head," I answered, which wasn't even a lie yet. That afternoon, Lucy and I baked muffins for her school's fundraiser. She stirred the batter while telling knock-knock jokes, blissfully unaware that her entire future had just lost a zero. I kept smiling, measuring sugar, trying not to picture dollar signs slipping through my fingers. When they finally went to bed that night, curiosity bloomed into panic. I opened the laptop again, clicking past the college fund's history tab. There it was, 3 withdrawals within 2 weeks, $5,000 each. The memo line on everyone said consulting fee, except we didn't have a consultant. We had a modest accountant who still faxed things. My heart pounded so loudly I thought I'd wake them. I clicked open each transaction, dragging the cursor through the trail of bank routing numbers. They led to an unfamiliar checking account with Daniel's name on it, but not our address. A cold prickle climbed my neck. I copied the account number into the search. Bar. Nothing. Private. Locked behind corporate jargon. Then, I noticed the notes section on one statement contained an email domain. MilanMediaTech.com. Milan. The city we always joked we'd visit someday, when the house was paid off and Lucy was in college. Maybe this was a cruel coincidence. I Googled it anyway. The top result, a boutique marketing firm registered overseas barely 6 months ago. The founder's page displayed a glossy photo of a young woman in sunglasses, her arm linked with, oh God, Daniel. My husband, smiling wider than I'd seen in years. I shut the laptop and sat motionless, hearing only the refrigerator's hum. When people talk about heartbreak, they imagine thunder. Mine came quiet, just the steady sound of air escaping, the world exhaling without me. By midnight, I reopened the computer, driven by an awful curiosity that hurt but needed feeding. There were charged hotel bookings, jewelry receipts, and airline rewards points redeemed under her last name. All traced back to the same secret account. The one digesting our daughter's future. I don't know how long I sat there before Daniel's voice startled me. "Can't sleep?" He stood in the doorway in his robe, hair damp, phone glued to his hand. For a moment, guilt burned my cheeks, even though I was the betrayed one. "I was checking the savings," I said carefully. "Something seems off." His eyes flicked to the screen. "Off? What do you mean?" "There's money missing." He laughed, short and sharp. "You're reading interim transfers, Mara. It's for a client investment. Temporary." 3 withdrawals, I said. "Same week," his tone cooled. "Do you trust me or not?" The question hung like a trapdoor. I wanted to say yes, if only to keep the peace. But words betrayed me. "I'm trying to." A muscle in his jaw twitched. "Good. Then stop snooping through accounts you don't understand. That money's coming back. Don't make drama out of nothing." He kissed the top of my head, pretending tenderness, then went back to bed. The perfume from his robe wasn't ours. It smelled foreign, citrus and musk, like duty-free indulgence. I sat frozen, staring at the spreadsheet he'd minimized. Numbers marched across the monitor like little soldiers guarding their lies. My reflection floated above them, pale and motionless. Somewhere down the hall, Lucy stirred, murmuring in her sleep, unaware that the promise I'd made, "I'll always keep you safe," had been broken by the man who once helped me make it. When dawn seeped in, I printed the bank statements and slid them under a cookbook in the kitchen drawer. Proof felt heavier than paper. At breakfast, Daniel acted cheerful, whistling over eggs, teasing Lucy about her upcoming science fair. I watched the two of them, my heart split by contradiction. The father she adored, the thief I'd uncovered. Lucy turned to me mid-bite and said, "Mom, can we go see the college with the robotics lab this summer?" Daniel's fork paused, and for a heartbeat, I saw a flicker of something, panic or guilt, before he smiled again. "Let's see how work looks, sweetheart." he said lightly. I looked down at my plate. Hunger gone. One missing zero had turned into a void, and I knew it was only the beginning. I lasted exactly 2 days before the truth began to rot through my self-control. Daniel came home late again, tie loosened, smelling faintly of airport perfume and guilt. His smile was the same one he used with clients, practiced, a little too bright. I poured wine for both of us, mostly to keep my hand steady. So, I said lightly, how's the Milan project? He looked up, one brow arching. What project? Oh, you know, I said, tapping my phone against the table. The one with Milan Media Tech. You made 3 consulting fee transfers there. I watched his eyes flicker. The half-second of real before denial puts its mask back on. Mara, he said, voice measured. Don't snoop through my professional transactions. You wouldn't understand. I understand our daughter's college fund disappeared into someone else's account, I said quietly. A silence heavy enough to tilt the room followed. Outside, a dog barked, absurdly normal in the middle of my marriage collapsing. He laughed, thin and sharp. You're blowing this out of proportion. It's business advancement, temporary cash flow. You think I'd steal from my own kid? His denial felt rehearsed, words he'd prepared for this very day. The lie was smooth, almost elegant. Your business advancement seems to be wearing red lipstick, I said. That got his attention. He slammed the glass onto the table, wine bleeding into the wood. You've been spying? I Googled the company that has my husband's paycheck on file. His jaw tightened. You're paranoid, the word stung. It always does, because it rewrites sanity as hysteria. I saw the photos, Daniel. He leaned closer, wine on his breath, whispering like I was the one caught. Do you have any idea how hard I work to give you this life? The pressure? The constant demands? One dinner with a potential investor, and you spin it into infidelity. One dinner, 3 wire transfers, and a hotel suite in her name, I said. He froze, and there it was, the blink of truth before performance resumes. Then he scoffed. You want me to say I made a mistake? Fine, I did. But you've been distant too. Mara. Cold. Maybe if you noticed me instead of budget spreadsheets. Stop. It came out like a plea and a command tangled together. He grabbed his coat, fury simmering into smugness. You'll thank me when the deal goes through. I'm not your enemy. He left before I could answer. The front door clicked shut like the period at the end of a sentence I hadn't finished. Lucy emerged from the hallway, still in her pajamas, eyes wide. Did you guys have a fight? I swallowed the lump in my throat. Grown-up talk, sweetheart. Go back to bed. She didn't move. Why was Dad yelling about money? I stared at her, this small, curious mirror of his sharpness and my patience. Lying to her felt like betraying my own conscience. We just need to recheck some numbers. Nothing you have to worry about. Her face softened with worry too old for 12. Are we poor? The question hit harder than any accusation. No, honey. We're not poor, just adjusting. She nodded slowly, but I saw her eyes dart toward the drawer where I'd hidden the statements. Smart kid. She noticed everything. After she went back to bed, I sat alone in the silent house. The half-empty wineglass still glistened in the dim light, the crimson stain on the wood spreading like a wound I'd eventually need to explain. I looked at the printed pages spread across the table. Evidence, motives, heartbreak. I wanted to burn them. I wanted to staple them to his conscience. Mostly, I wanted to sleep without hearing his voice twisting guilt into gratitude. When I finally dragged myself to bed, I found his side cold, the sheets folded like a hotel service had been there before him. On his pillow lay the faintest trace of perfume, floral and unfamiliar. I almost laughed. How precisely poetic for a mistress from Milan. Through the thin walls, Lucy's breathing slowed into dreams. I whispered to the dark, more to convince myself than the room. We'll be fine, my love. We'll outthink him. Then, quieter still, a promise only my heart heard. He has no idea who he's underestimated. The next evening, I decided we would have dinner together. No fights, no cold silences. Just a meal like normal families. I told myself that routine might glue us back together, or at least keep Lucy from sensing our fracture. I roasted chicken the way he liked it, butter under the skin, rosemary from the garden. The smell filled the house with false comfort, like staging a home that was no longer for sale. Daniel texted that he'd be running late. Business call. He arrived 40 minutes past dinner, wearing that same immaculate suit, tie loosened just enough to look like effort mattered more than family. I kept it warm, I said, sliding the dish toward him. He glanced at the table. Plates set, candles flickering, Lucy's art project as a centerpiece, and smiled faintly. Feels fancy. What's the occasion? Us, I said. We could use a normal night. Lucy grinned, always the peacekeeper. Dad, I saved you the biggest drumstick. He chuckled, ruffling her hair. For a brief moment, I almost believed we might survive this pantomime. Then Lucy, unaware of the landmines she was stepping on, said, "Guess what, Dad?" I looked up robotics programs. My dream college has summer workshops. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. Daniel's smile tightened. That's great, kiddo. We'll look into that later. Can we? She asked. There's even a scholarship form. He cleared his throat, stabbing at his potatoes. We'll talk about it when work settles. Things are in transition. In transition? I repeated softly, unable to stop myself. That's one word for it. He shot me a warning glance over Lucy's head. Mara. Lucy blinked between us, catching the charged silence. Did I say something wrong? I forced a smile so brittle I could feel it crack. Of course not, sweetheart. Eat your veggies. Daniel kept his gaze fixed on his plate. The rhythmic scrape of cutlery became excruciating. To fill the void, Lucy began chatting about her science fair project, detecting financial fraud patterns using code. It's about how numbers tell stories, she said cheerfully. I almost dropped my glass. She didn't mean it as a jab. She was simply describing her world, but Daniel flinched, the color in his face dulling. Sounds complicated, he muttered. Not really, she said. Once you understand the data, you can see when someone's hiding something. The knife in his hand stopped midair. Our eyes met across the table. For a heartbeat, his mask slipped. Then he laughed too loudly. Our genius in training, huh? Lucy smiled, oblivious to the tension threading beneath her words. When dinner ended, he claimed another urgent client call and retreated to the office. The click of the door was decisive, like a gavel hitting wood. Lucy helped me clear the table. Mom, why did Dad get mad? He's just stressed, I said. She stacked the plates, thinking hard. You always said numbers don't lie. Maybe we should check ours. She said it so innocently that tears burned behind my eyes. I'll handle it, I whispered. After she went to bed, I stood in the kitchen surrounded by the echo of what had once been family noise. The chair he'd vacated still held the faint shape of him, but the warmth had gone cold. I found myself staring at Lucy's half-finished homework by candlelight. Equations, order, logic. Things that made sense. Upstairs, Daniel's muted voice drifted through his office door, words too low to catch but tone unmistakable, intimate, amused. Another client call. Another withdrawal waiting to happen. The candles had burned out completely when I whispered to the dark, "Let this be the bottom." Tomorrow I start climbing, somewhere down the hall. Lucy stirred in her sleep, murmuring, "It's okay." Mom, as if she had read my mind, and for the first time since the missing zero, I believed maybe, just maybe, she was right. I woke up the next morning with the kind of hangover you get without alcohol. Just exhaustion and dread, brewed overnight. The kitchen still smelled faintly of rosemary and regret. Daniel had already left, his coffee cup half empty, his tie missing. Only Lucy sat at the counter, pencil tucked behind her ear, bent over a spiral notebook like a detective labeling clues. "Morning, detective," I said, trying for cheer. "Homework?" She looked up, eyes bright but serious. "Sort of. I'm working on patterns." I poured myself coffee, eyebrows raised. "Patterns?" "For the science fair," she said, flipping the page toward me. I expected graphs or equations, but the sheet was divided into 3 columns labeled date, amount, reason, tiny. Careful handwriting filled each line, withdrawals, deposits, and comments like Dad's business dinner or Mom bought groceries. My hand froze on the mug's handle. "Where did you get those numbers?" She shrugged, too casual. "You always say to check bank statements when learning budgeting." I checked. "Lucy," I started, but she cut me off with a small, sharp confidence I didn't know she'd grown yet. "He's lying, isn't he?" The question punctured every wall I'd tried to hold upright. I sat down beside her. "Why would you say that?" "Because $4,500 disappeared the same week he said his project client was in Milan," she said, reading straight off her notes. "And Milan's not a person." Something between pride and heartbreak twisted inside me. "Sweetheart, you shouldn't have to worry about that." "But I already am," she said simply. "I just want to help. You always tell me, when things don't add up, check the math." She wasn't being rebellious. She was being me. The me I'd almost forgotten existed. I looked down at her notebook again. She had drawn arrows connecting withdrawals to calendar events, his business trips, his credit card usage. Beside one date, she'd doodled a lightning bolt and written, "He's in trouble." "How do you know all this?" I asked, half whispering. Phone in hand, she showed me a spreadsheet app. "It's what we learned at Coding Club. You can cross-reference different bank feeds." I just had to match dates with receipts. A sick realization trembled through me. While I had been lost in disbelief, my 12-year-old had started an investigation elegant enough to make accountants proud. You didn't tell anyone else, did you?" "Just you," she said firm, "because Mom always tells the truth." That sentence undid me. I pulled her close, kissed the top of her head. "We'll sort it out together," I murmured. Her next question landed like a stone dropping through clear water. "Do we tell him we know?" I shook my head. "Not yet. Then what do we do?" I smiled through the ache. "We get smarter." Lucy lit up. "I can make alerts. Anytime money moves from the joint account, it emails you and me. Dad won't even notice." "Too risky," I said automatically, then hesitated. Maybe risk was what the situation required. But show me how. For the next hour, our small kitchen turned into something between a war room and a science lab. Laptops open, paper everywhere, Lucy explaining shortcuts I barely understood. I kept glancing at her. The gentle concentration on her face. The way she chewed her pencil when thinking. How grown she suddenly looked. At one point, she said softly, "You don't have to be scared." "Mom, I'm not," I lied. She smiled like she knew. "Good, because I think numbers can protect us." When Daniel called that evening, I switched to speaker by reflex. His tone was too bright. "Hey, my girls. How's dinner?" "Just fine," I said. Lucy muted the phone and mouthed, "He's at a restaurant." I could hear laughter and clinking glasses behind him. Definitely not from a client meeting. After we hung up, Lucy scribbled restaurant noise, Thursday night, into her notebook. Then she looked at me, expression focused, almost calm. "Mom, if he keeps lying, we need evidence." The way she said "we" sealed something sacred. No longer victim and child. We were co-conspirators in quiet survival. That night, before bed, I found her notebook sitting neatly on the coffee table. The last line of her tidy handwriting read, "Dad thinks we're asleep." I closed it, heart hammering but strangely at peace. The storm hadn't passed, but now we had lightning of our own. For a while, our house existed on two frequencies. On the surface, life went on. Lucy at the kitchen table doing homework, Daniel tapping out work emails, me loading the dishwasher in rhythmic silence. Beneath it, another current hummed, an unspoken alliance between my daughter and me. Each glance across the table carried a code. Keep calm. Keep watching. Lucy's science project took over half the dining room. Spreadsheets bloomed like vines on her laptop. Color-coded cells mapping transactions, timestamps, and patterns of deception. She made it look like a school assignment on data visualization. In truth, it was forensic accounting in pigtailed disguise. Every time she clicked a new tab, my stomach turned cold and proud all at once. I guided her just enough to understand consequences, the moral lines we were walking. "What you're doing isn't really hacking," I said one night. "It's observation. But if we cross into his private emails, that's illegal." She tilted her head. So I just follow the open doors he left unlocked? That phrasing, so innocent, so precise, made me catch my breath. Exactly, I said. Follow what's already open. The next week, Daniel traveled again, supposedly for regional meetings. The first night he was gone, an alert pinged on my phone. Another transfer, $3,200 to the Milan account. Lucy, sitting beside me in pajamas, whispered, "Got it." She printed the statement like a scientist recording lab results and tucked it into a folder labeled Variables of Dishonesty. I tried to laugh, but my throat hurt from the effort. While other kids her age were trading soccer cards, Lucy was cataloging betrayal patterns. But she seemed oddly steady, fascinated even. "It's like chess," she said. "He moves money, we find where. If we know his next move, he can't win." There it was. That clarity children carry before the world teaches them resignation. Still, I feared the emotional toll. One evening I found her gazing out her bedroom window, laptop dimmed. "Hey," I said softly, "you okay?" She nodded, though her voice trembled. "I just don't get how someone can pretend so well. Does Dad even love us?" I wanted to give her certainty. Instead, honesty slipped out. Maybe in his way, or maybe he loves what we make him look like. That seemed to settle her. She turned back to the screen, muttering, "Then let's make him look different." Over the following days, she layered her reports with screenshots of messages that popped up when his tablet synced. Dinner reservations, digital receipts, emojis from a number saved under M. Each discovery hit like a slap, but I forced composure. We were gathering evidence, not vengeance. At least that's what I told myself. When Daniel called from whatever hotel he was really in, I practiced neutrality. "How's the conference?" I asked. "Exhausting," he said. "You wouldn't want to be here. Boring talk after boring talk." As he spoke, Lucy turned her laptop toward me. On her screen glowed a set of airline records she'd traced through his miles program. Destination, Paris, connecting through Milan. The irony almost made me choke. After we hung up, she whispered, "Do adults know how easy it is to catch lies?" "Some do," I said. "They count on the rest of us being too tired to look." That night I wrote her a note and slid it under her door before bed. Pride can be our witness, but truth is our lawyer. In the morning she doodled back a small gavel and a heart. Meanwhile, outwardly, Daniel's arrogance grew. He texted less, left earlier, came home smelling like airports and excuses, yet inside our walls our quiet documentation thickened. I started a hidden folder on my work computer, labeled Tax Prep, filled with PDFs Lucy exported. We were preparing not only emotional proof, but an eventual reckoning, the kind where paper speaks louder than confrontation. Then, late one Friday, Lucy's diligence revealed something new. She'd followed a breadcrumb trail of invoices until she reached the company's internal site, publicly visible by accident. The profile listed Daniel as senior investor partner, his photograph gleaming beside Amara's. Under capital contribution, a figure appeared, precisely equal to what he'd stolen from our daughter's fund. My knees nearly buckled. Lucy whispered, "He used my college money to become her business partner." I stared at the screen, heat surging behind my eyes. "Print everything," I said evenly. I heard myself as if from a distance, a person in a documentary voiceover. And that was the moment she stopped being afraid. The printer whirred, pages spitting out evidence like confessions. Lucy stacked them neatly into a binder, labeling the spine with painter's tape. Truth. She turned to me, hesitant. "What happens now?" I looked around our small kitchen, at the storm calendar pinned to the fridge, the sticky notes that made our lives look organized. "Now," I said, "we wait for the right stage. Every lie wants an audience, Lucy. We'll let his own performance collapse in front of one." She nodded, closing the binder with both hands. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance, the first literal storm after weeks of tension. Lucy grinned faintly. "Foreshadowing," she said, quoting her favorite writing term. I had to laugh. Leave it to my 12-year-old to turn betrayal into a literature lesson. I hugged her tight and whispered, You're my smartest decision. And somewhere deep in my chest, under fear and exhaustion, something fierce began to grow again. Not anger exactly, but focus. The kind of focus you need before justice finally, inevitably, introduces itself. 2 weeks passed with an almost eerie calm. Daniel behaved like a man who believed the storm had passed, whistling as he left for client dinners, texting heart emojis as if those little icons could erase a ledger of betrayal. He even brought home flowers one night, cheap grocery store carnations, the color of apology disguised as nostalgia. When he dropped them on the counter, he laughed. "You forgot, didn't you?" "Forgot what?" "I managed our anniversary. For a heartbeat, I thought he was joking. Irony had become our native language. Then he handed me a card from his briefcase, generic gold loop spelling "to my one and only." He was serious. I wanted to say, "Only what?" "Only fool?" Instead, I smiled. "Of course. Dinner then?" He looked surprised, then pleased. We deserve a night out. He had no idea he'd just accepted my invitation into his own exposé. That night, I told Lucy the plan. She listened without blinking, her calm older than her years. "You're going to follow him?" she asked. "Not exactly." "We're going to watch," I said. She tapped the truth binder on her desk. "He said the client dinner was at Fontaine's, right? The fancy restaurant by the river?" "Yes. He'll expect me to believe it's work." "Then we pick a table 2 floors down," she said, already opening her laptop. "I can connect my phone to the restaurant's public Wi-Fi. If he uses his credit card, the transaction sends a ping. We know exactly where he is and when." I stared at her, half terrified, half awed. "Since when do you talk like an intelligence officer?" She grinned. "Coding club, Mom. We never lose." Friday evening came draped in the kind of dusk that seems to hold its breath. Daniel dressed sharper than usual, humming in the mirror, that same cologne slipping between domestic and foreign. "Business dinner," he said, smoothing his tie. "A big potential investor. Could be good news for all of us." "I'll hold a toast for you," I said, and he kissed my cheek, satisfied. As soon as his car disappeared down the street, Lucy grabbed her backpack. "Observation post ready?" We had booked a small table on the terrace below Fontaine's, close enough to see the glow of chandeliers, far enough to be invisible. The waiter smiled at us, probably assuming this was mother-daughter night out. In a way, it was. Through the glass balcony above, silhouettes moved, Daniel's recognizably confident outline, and across from him, the unmistakable cascade of dark hair. Amara, the so-called business partner. Lucy nudged me gently. On her phone, a notification flashed. "Transaction processed. Fontaine's fine dining. 840, she whispered. "Client dinners don't cost that much." I forced myself to steady breathing. "Record the timestamp," I said. She snapped a discreet photo of the receipt screen and saved it to the binder's digital folder. Inside, I could see Daniel laughing, hand grazing Amara's wrist. It was unsettling how ordinary infidelity looked under chandeliers, just 2 people sharing dessert. Lucy turned to me, voice quiet but fierce. "He really thinks you'll never find out." "Oh, he'll find out," I murmured. Then fate added the perfect flourish. A local news reporter, filming a lifestyle segment about fine dining, stepped into Fontaine's lobby with a camera crew. The lens panned, catching glimpses through the glass. Daniel and Amara leaned close, their faces clearly visible if anyone paused the broadcast later. Lucy's eyes widened. "Mom, public record." I smiled for the first time in weeks. An actual smile, not one stitched from survival. "Exactly." When the dinner ended, Daniel handed his card to the server with a dramatic flourish. Lucy caught the imprint on her feed. "Screenshot secured," she whispered. "Happy anniversary to us." We left quietly, hearts thundering with a mixture of ache and triumph. On the drive home, she scrolled through her phone, organizing evidence like an executive assistant of karma. "Should we tell him tonight?" she asked. "Not yet. Tomorrow is better." "Why?" "Because he'll sleep like a man who thinks he's safe," I said. "And that kind of sleep makes the morning truth hit harder." Just before bed, I looked at the flowers he'd left on the counter. I plucked one carnation and pressed it flat inside Lucy's truth binder, a relic for when she's older and knows how expensive innocence really is. In my inbox, a new message glowed from a local family law attorney, our friend Sarah, subject line, "Ready when you are." Outside, the rain that had threatened all evening finally began to fall, gentle and sure, washing the city lights into blurred gold streaks. I stood by the window thinking of our reflection. Mother and daughter, silent witnesses reclaiming their story. The morning after the dinner, Daniel strutted into the kitchen humming a victory tune. He smelled of champagne and late-night confidence, tossing his blazer over a chair. "Big night?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. "Huge," he said. "If this deal lands, everything changes for us. For us." He still used us like a brand he hadn't yet retired. He poured coffee, humming louder, never noticing the way Lucy and I exchanged a look over the cereal box. She had already synced last night's photos from her phone to the truth folder, cataloged under anniversary evidence. When he left for work, the door clicked shut like punctuation on a chapter finished and proofread. "Ready?" Lucy asked. I nodded. "It's time." We gathered every document, screenshots of transactions, records of emails between him and Amara's company, the restaurant charge, the airline miles confirming the Milan flights. It spread across the dining table like a mosaic illustrating betrayal. Lucy handed me a USB drive shaped like a silver key. "Everything's backed up here," she said. "Password protected. Our lawyer friend should get it. When did my 12-year-old become logistics captain of my life? At noon, I drove to Sarah's office. She listened, eyes narrowing sharper with every page I slid across her desk. "You've got him, Mara," she said finally. "This isn't rumor. It's forensic storytelling." "Storytelling," I repeated. "Funny word for fraud." Sarah smiled grimly. "You mentioned the Milan company registered jointly in both their names?" I nodded. "Perfect," she said. "That ties the stolen funds directly to his affair and to corporate misappropriation. It's not just divorce grounds, it's criminal misuse." The phrase hung heavy, almost unreal. Criminal misuse. I wasn't chasing vengeance. I was finding law. She offered to send a formal notice, but paused when she saw Lucy's handwriting on one of the printouts. Tiny annotations, arrows linking dates. "Who did this analysis?" she asked, half impressed. "My daughter," I said proudly. She thought of everything. Sarah looked at me a long moment, then nodded. "Keep her genius close but hidden for now. We'll reveal what's necessary when he walks straight into his own evidence." That evening, I sat at Lucy's desk as she composed the summary email. Her typing was meticulous. Attached are all relevant statements and receipts corroborating unauthorized transfers from the joint college fund account. Each item matches dates of Daniel's personal expenditures and overseas transactions aligned with Milan Media Tech. She ended with a calm precision that made me both proud and sad. "We offer this evidence in good faith and request legal guidance before confrontation." When we hit send, the soft whoosh of the email sounded oddly final, like a sigh the house had been holding for months. We celebrated with takeout pizza, the first proper meal in weeks that didn't taste like anxiety. Lucy tore napkins into confetti and whispered, "Stage 1 complete." Her phrasing made me laugh even as tears threatened. "Are we spies or survivors?" She grinned. "Both. Survivors get justice. Spies get style." Later that night, while cleaning up, I heard the faint buzz of my phone on the counter. Sarah's reply, "Received everything. This is airtight. Prepare for next steps tomorrow. Let him talk first, then act." It was strange how calm I felt reading it. Anger had transformed into clarity. The fear had burned out, and in its place came something quieter. Poise. Upstairs, I checked on Lucy. She was already asleep, clutching the silver key USB like a lucky charm. In the soft lamplight, she looked much younger again, not the small strategist who'd spent a month unraveling deceit. I tucked the blanket around her and whispered, "You did so good, baby." Downstairs, I sat at Daniel's laptop, open on the counter. Apparently, he trusted his passwords more than his wife. His most recent email window was still logged in. Among office memos and spam from luxury brands, one subject line caught my eye. Amara. We're free now. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Knowing was enough. Instead, I composed one of my own, addressed to his business account and CC'd to Sarah. Dear Daniel, I'd like to discuss our finances tomorrow. Please be home by 7. No threats, no drama, just a meeting request lined with inevitability. When I pressed send, relief didn't feel like joy. It felt like gravity releasing. I shut the laptop, turned off the lights, and whispered to the dark window reflection. 2 women, 1 grown, 1 growing, standing taller than the secrets that tried to shrink them. Showtime. He came home at 6:59 p.m. Perfect timing, the kind of precision Daniel reserved for things that made him look responsible. He stepped inside, phone glued to his ear, laughing at whatever colleague he was charming. The sound stopped when he saw Sarah standing by our fireplace holding a folder. Mara, he asked, gaze flicking between us. What's going on? I kept my voice even. Meeting about our finances. Remember? He frowned but closed the door, pocketing his phone. You invited legal counsel to our home? I figured it was the safest place for the truth. The air thickened. Lucy sat quietly at the corner of the couch, sketchbook on her lap, pretending to doodle. Daniel barely registered her there, his first and biggest mistake. Sarah motioned toward the dining table. The binder Lucy had labeled Truth waited in the center like an altar. Daniel laughed uneasily. What is this? An intervention? More of a clarification, I said. You'll want to sit. He didn't. Instead, he loosened his tie. The tell. The one I'd come to recognize when he was trying to regain control. If this is about that little Milan rumor, let me spare us both the embarrassment. There's nothing to hide, Sarah interrupted smoothly. Then you won't mind reviewing some documents. She slid a set of papers across the table. He glanced down, first confused, then alarmed. Bank transfers, signatures, his name in his handwriting. The more pages he turned, the less oxygen seemed to exist in the room. Where did you get these? He demanded. I folded my arms, voice quiet. From you. You left enough breadcrumbs even a 12-year-old could follow. His eyes darted to Lucy, disbelief flickering into fury. You involved her in this? I didn't have to, I said softly. You already did when you stole her future. He opened his mouth, half anger, half disbelief. You think a few bank statements prove theft? It was business restructuring. Investments! Sarah tapped another page. Filed under personal expenditures for jewelry, hotels, and overseas dining. Would you like to explain the business model for that? His voice rose. You're twisting everything. Lucy's pencil snapped in her hand, startling him. She lifted her chin. Numbers don't twist, Dad. They're straight lines. You bent them. The silence that followed felt cavernous. For the first time, Daniel actually looked at her. Really looked. And the mirror of what he'd become was too clear to deny. His tone softened instantly, performative and trembling. Lucy, sweetheart. Don't, she said, cutting him off with more authority than any 12-year-old should have to find. He turned back to me, grasping for higher ground. You'll ruin our family over a misunderstanding? I steadied my breath. Our family was already ruined the moment you decided your pride needed funding more than our child's education. Sarah slid the final piece across the table, a printed still from that televised lifestyle segment. Daniel and Amara laughing under Fontaine's chandelier. The anchor's caption beneath it read, Local investor celebrates partnership expansion. He stared at the photo, face draining of color. You dug through broadcasts now? You put yourself on broadcast, I said. I just pressed play. I could see the cascade inside him, the frantic calculation of escape routes. He reached for posture, for charm, anything that had ever worked before. Mara, we can discuss this privately. No need to dramatize. I shook my head. Privately is how this started. Publicly is how it ends. That line seemed to puncture whatever performance remained. He sank into the chair finally, head in his hands. What do you want? The question was raw, transactional, the only language he still understood. Sarah answered before I could. Restitution of the stolen funds. Transfer of ownership documents, including your stake in Milan Media Tech, back to Mara and Lucy. In exchange, We won't pursue criminal charges at this moment. He looked up sharply. Criminal? Misappropriating joint marital funds for personal gain in a registered business constitutes fraud, she said flatly. If we file, the firm goes down with you. And Amara stands to lose much more than your attention. The fight drained from him like water leaking from a cracked glass. He muttered something about mistakes, about pressure, about meaning well. Each excuse sounded smaller than the last. Lucy rose, walked over, and placed the broken pencil on the table beside the binder. That's all that's left of it, she said quietly. I watched Daniel gaze at it, the tangible symbol of whatever bridge he thought still existed, and saw realization click. Without rage, without theatrics, the truth had cornered him. Finally, he signed. His signature wobbled, the ink blotting slightly. Even the pen seemed to resist being part of the story. Sarah gathered the pages, nodding once to me, a silent verdict delivered. When paperwork ended, Daniel stood, shoulders sagging. I never meant for it to go this far, he murmured. I met his eyes. Intent doesn't rebuild trust. Actions do, and yours spoke clearly. He looked at Lucy, searching for that uncomplicated adoration that used to greet him whenever he walked through the door. It wasn't there anymore. Just polite distance, calm and final. I'll pack some things, he said. I stepped aside. Take what you need. Nothing more. The door shut behind him with a single thud that echoed through the house, neither triumphant nor tragic, just profoundly final. For a long moment, none of us moved. Then Lucy turned to me, voice barely a whisper. Was that justice? I pulled her into my arms, feeling her heartbeat against mine. It's the beginning of it, she nodded, swallowing hard. Then maybe next time people will believe the quiet ones notice everything. Sarah smiled faintly, collecting her briefcase. They will now. When the lights dimmed later, the house felt startlingly spacious, like deceit had been using all the oxygen. We stood by the window together, watching dusk settle. Lucy slipped her hand into mine. Mom, she said, still staring at the darkening street. We should open a new account tomorrow. I squeezed her fingers. Yes, baby. Our own. And for the first time in months, I breathed without flinching, because the courtroom we built in our living room had delivered the only verdict that mattered. Truth, restored to its rightful balance. If the confrontation was thunder, the days that followed were lightning, sudden, sharp, illuminating everything at once. On Monday morning, Daniel called in sick. By Tuesday, his phone resumed buzzing relentlessly. Business partners, investors, and finally his employer. They all wanted explanations. Accounts had frozen after Sarah's legal submission. The Milan Media tech transfer trail lit up on compliance screens like fireworks. By Wednesday, I didn't have to uncover anything. The truth simply performed itself. Lucy watched from the breakfast table, cereal untouched, as I scrolled through an email thread forwarded by Sarah. A chain of executives copied on one message. We were unaware of employee involvement in the partnership. Internal review pending immediate termination. Lucy glanced at me. So he's fired? Suspended for now, I said. Fired when they finish reading page 2. She nodded slowly, sipping orange juice with the calm of someone watching justice settle into place. Then the news notification arrived. A business blog headline. Local investor linked to misused college fund in overseas deal. The photo was cropped from that lifestyle broadcast. The Fontaine's dinner, the laughing glass of wine, Amara glinting beside him. The internet did what the internet always does. Investigated, speculated, memorialized. Commenters quoted portions of the article with moral outrage that in another life might have embarrassed me, but now felt deserved. By the afternoon, reporters left voicemails on my phone, eager for comment. Sarah advised, say nothing. The evidence will speak louder than an interview ever could. I obeyed, but Lucy grinned each time another link surfaced. He's trending, isn't he? Yes, I said, though not on purpose. Still, some part of me ached. Not for him exactly, but for the humiliation Lucy had to witness. She'd lost her father in public. I tried explaining that to her one evening, sitting on the porch while twilight spilled gold across the lawn. "You shouldn't have to see people shamed like this," I whispered. She shrugged. "He built the shame, Mom. We just held up the mirror." That line etched itself into my heart. She had inherited not my anger but my logic. The next morning, an email from Amara appeared in my inbox. An apology of sorts written in a tone that was half remorse, half damage control. I didn't know the extent of the situation. "I've ended the partnership. I'll return the funds if possible." I didn't reply. Some letters don't need answering. The subtext of ruin had already delivered my response. Meanwhile, Daniel's narrative crumbled further. His boss confirmed to Sarah that a full investigation would follow, and the company's PR statement listed serious ethical breaches. Even our small-town local paper ran a modest headline summarizing events without names, but everyone could read between the lines. Neighbors practiced polite avoidance. A few dropped casseroles on the porch like offerings at a temple of pity. I accepted them with small nods, not out of hunger, but ceremony. Each act of kindness, however awkward, stitched another tear in the fabric he'd ripped. Through it all, Lucy remained eerily serene. She spent afternoons editing her science fair project, adding a new line to the title slide. Predictive models of unethical behavior, how numbers expose lies. I asked, "Isn't that a little on the nose?" She grinned, only if the judges read the news. Sarah's final email came Friday. Saturday morning felt strangely bright, like sunlight had been waiting its turn all along. No drama, no emails, no footsteps heavier than they should be, just quiet. I realized I'd forgotten what quiet without dread even sounded like. Lucy padded into the kitchen wearing her oversized hoodie, hair tangled from sleep. "Bank day?" she said around a mouthful of toast. "Bank day," I confirmed. We drove with the windows rolled down, wind tangling our hair, a playlist humming softly, songs I hadn't listened to in years because Daniel hated them. Freedom hummed in every chorus. In the final fight before he left, Daniel threw one line over his shoulder that still echoed in my mind. "One day you'll thank me." At the time, I'd laughed, a sound part disbelief, part self-defense. What could I ever be grateful for in betrayal? But as weeks softened into distance, the words returned in odd moments, folding laundry, tucking Lucy in, stirring soup. Not as an accusation this time, but as a strange puzzle the heart needed to solve. He'd been right, in the wrongest, most ironic way. I did thank him eventually, though not out loud and never in the way he'd meant. Because loss, once you survive it, becomes a curriculum no school teaches. In the beginning, anger filled every space he vacated. I'd open a cabinet and see his coffee mug, the chipped one with the company logo, and feel resentment choke me like smoke. Then embarrassment for still caring, then exhaustion for feeling anything at all. But slowly, life diluted him. His absence became background noise, the kind you forget until silence overtakes it. The house stopped echoing like a half-finished conversation. I started noticing color again, the red of Lucy's sneakers, the honey gold toast of morning sunlight, the blue paint peeling on our front steps. Simple domestic things, proof that the world kept kindly spinning even when we stood still. People asked softly how I was doing. I learned to answer honestly, healing. It's just slower than I thought. They'd nod, relieved to hear the word healing because it implied progress without details. Progress was easier for everyone than pain. But healing wasn't pretty. It was paperwork, therapy, leftover bills, nights lying awake wondering if forgiveness required forgetting. It was Lucy climbing into my bed at 2 a.m. after a nightmare and whispering, "We're okay now, right?" Every time I answered yes, it became truer. One Sunday afternoon, months later, I found myself sorting old photos for an insurance renewal. There was the graduation picture, the beach trip, the faux candid Christmas morning. In each one, I saw the subtle prequel to dishonesty, the too wide smile, the half-tilted body away from us, the eyes already somewhere else. Instead of rage, I felt gratitude, strange, clean gratitude for clarity. The pictures had stopped lying. In another pile, I found my own forgotten image, a wallet-sized snapshot taken before marriage, before compromise. Younger me, the woman who balanced budgets and dreams with equal optimism. She looked almost naive, but entirely alive. "Welcome back," I whispered to her reflection. Lucy walked in, holding a school envelope. "We won an award," she said, handing me a certificate from the regional science fair. Her project, Our Variables of Dishonesty, had taken first place. "They said my data could help teach online safety," she added, cheeks glowing. "Maybe we can help other people not get tricked." My heart swelled with pride that was softer than victory, steadier than survival. "That's better justice than the court ever gave," I said. She studied me closely. "Does that mean we're done with all of it?" "Yes," I told her. "The storm gave us new roots. We're just learning how deep they grow." That night, after she slept, I sat by the window with a cup of tea and finally opened one of the letters Daniel had mailed weeks earlier, sealed apology envelopes from somewhere out of state. I didn't plan to, but curiosity isn't always disloyalty. Inside, the handwriting looked small, almost humble. He wrote of therapy, regret, wanting forgiveness. At the end, "Maybe you'll thank me one day for teaching you independence." I folded the letter once and slipped it into the drawer with the others. He wanted to be the author of my gratitude. But gratitude didn't belong to him. It belonged to the aftermath we built ourselves, the evenings filled with peace instead of explanations, laughter instead of evidence. If he had taught me anything, it wasn't independence. It was discernment. Later, as moonlight brushed the kitchen counters, I whispered the words he'd thrown at me months ago. "You were right," I said to the empty room. "I do thank you. Not because I needed him, but because I no longer did." And in that quiet, unceremonious revelation, the storm that had once shredded every illusion finally folded itself into distant thunder, leaving only the steady hum of a home still learning to breathe freely. Two voices, mother and daughter, singing softly in the safe aftermath of truth. The bank lobby smelled of polished wood and paper, a place heavy with adult seriousness. But walking in with Lucy at my side, folder in hand, I felt a ground shift. The two of us stepping into a new ledger, one we wrote ourselves. The manager, a polite woman named Connie who'd followed the restoration paperwork, greeted us warmly. "Mrs. Hart, everything from the settlement has cleared. We just need your confirmation signatures for the new account." She gestured toward 2 chairs. Lucy sat next to me, legs swinging, eyes wide at the grown-up solemnity of it all. I signed the first sheet. Connie slid another across. "Do you want to set up an authorized savings card in your daughter's name?" I hesitated, part practicality, part awe. Then I nodded. "Yes, it's her fund. She earned it more than anyone." Connie smiled, typing briskly. "Of course. We'll issue a debit card linked to the account. Optional parental control settings if you prefer." Lucy perked up. "Can I choose the card design?" "Absolutely," Connie said. Lucy scrolled through a tablet, choosing a navy blue card with a constellation pattern. Fitting, I thought, for the girl who navigated betrayal like a star map. When Connie returned with the paperwork, she placed 2 small envelopes between us, mine plain and silver, Lucy's dark blue with faint glitter catching the light. "This is your key," Connie said. "Literal access, but by the look on your faces, I think it means more than that." It did. I handed Lucy hers. For a second, she didn't open it, just stared. Then carefully, she tore the edge and slid out the card. "It's heavier than I thought," she whispered. "Responsibility always is," I said. She laughed, shaking her head. "You sound like a teacher." "Life gave me a fast certification," I replied. While I finished signing, she pressed the card flat against the table like she was sealing a promise. "So now the account's safe? Safer than ever? Only our names, double authentication, alerts, all of it." Lucy exhaled, shoulders dropping. "Then it's officially over." "Almost," I said. "There's one more thing." I pulled from my bag a simple pink notebook, the same one she'd started scribbling in the night of the argument, back when evidence lived in pencil lines. The pages were now worn and full. I handed it to Connie. "This can be shredded," I said. It was our temporary archive of truth. Connie accepted it solemnly. Let's make room for better entries. As she walked away, Lucy turned to me. You sure you don't want to keep it? I smiled. I've memorized every page. On the drive home, Lucy rolled down her window again, hair whipping in the wind, the new card tucked securely in her hoodie pocket. What will we do with the money now? She asked. Save most of it, I said. But I think we deserve a small celebration first, like ice cream? Like a trip, I said. College tours. We'll visit the schools you used to only dream about. Her grin could have powered the car. You mean it? Every word. Consider it interest on courage. She looked out at the city skyline, voice suddenly solemn. Dad always used to hold the house keys when we left. You do now. I reached over, resting one hand on her shoulder. We both do. That night, after she fell asleep, I sat by her door listening to her gentle breathing and slipped the blue envelope back out of her backpack. Inside, the constellation card glittered faintly, edges reflecting lamplight. The pattern looked like a sky chart, scattered stars connected by invisible lines. The same way our story had been written, scattered pain, connected by love you couldn't always see until you stepped back. I traced one small star near the corner and whispered, You led me home. Then I returned it to her bag, locked the front door, the only lock that mattered now, and finally exhaled into a silence that no longer needed bravery. Just belonging. The next chapter of our life no longer required passwords or suspicion, only trust, our newest, safest account. Spring arrived like a long overdue letter, edges warm from traveling too far. For the first time in years, our house smelled of new beginnings instead of dread, open windows, lemon polish, and Lucy's school books scattered everywhere. Between rebuilding finances and steady work, life had crept back into rhythm, morning checklists, messy breakfasts, laughter that wasn't forced. But that Saturday was different. It was the regional scholarship fair at the community center, the culmination of Lucy's science project, the same one stitched together from the data that had once exposed her father. She came downstairs in her lucky sneakers and a blazer 2 sizes too big. Do I look professional or drowned in fabric? She asked. Professionally adorable, I said. Her grin flashed. Perfect. Adorable wins hearts. Data wins minds. We drove to the event in easy silence, the way you do when words would only clutter peace. The parking lot buzzed with vendors, parents, and hopeful students practicing pitches near poster boards. Lucy clutched her neatly printed display, predictive models of unethical behavior, renamed politely for public taste, minus the personal history. Inside, the air smelled of coffee and ambition. Laughter echoed against the polished gym floors. At least 20 booths sparkled with colorful charts, but Lucy's table was simple. Blue backdrop, constellation-patterned header, diagrams of algorithms branching like trees. I hovered near the back while she explained her work to the panel. 3 professors peering over glasses with that academic mix of skepticism and admiration. So your program identifies financial inconsistencies based on metadata? One asked. Yes, Lucy said easily. Most fraud leaves patterns before it's visible. If you teach computers empathy instead of just logic, empathy? The second judge interrupted, intrigued. She nodded. Because people who commit dishonest acts use emotion to hide them. If the system understands emotional frequency, like timing, vocabulary, or urgency, it can flag trouble earlier. It's not just math. It's behavior. I watched their expressions shift. They weren't just impressed. They were captivated. The lead judge smiled. You built all this yourself? With a little editing help from my mom, she said proudly, glancing at me. She's really good with stories. The simple acknowledgement made my throat tighten. For so long, I'd felt like the punctuation at the end of everyone else's story. Now somehow, I was part of the headline again. The results came 2 hours later, after speeches about innovation and youth ethics. Chairs squeaked as contestants fidgeted. Lucy squeezed my hand once, not for luck, but solidarity. When the announcer said her name, it took me a beat to process it. First place, Lucy Hart, for predictive models of unethical behavior. The applause sounded far away. All I saw was Lucy walking briskly toward the stage, chin high, cheeks flushed. The award, a small clear trophy etched with her name, caught sunlight and fractured it into tiny prisms across the wall. She held it like something both fragile and fierce. The MC added, "Her project will be showcased at the upcoming National Youth Innovation Expo. Scholarship recommendations guaranteed." "Outstanding work, Miss Hart!" The crowd clapped louder. I might have too, if my hands hadn't been busy wiping sudden tears. When she returned, she pressed the trophy into my palms. "For you," she said. "No," I whispered. "It's yours. You earned it." Her smile was calm, wise. "Yeah, but you built the courage that built this. We share credit." Some parents were taking pictures nearby, flashes blinking. A woman turned and murmured to me, "Your daughter's extraordinary." "Yes," I said. She always was. The world finally caught up. Later, at the refreshment table, I found myself beside the same local reporter who months earlier had inadvertently filmed Daniel's downfall. She recognized me instantly, eyes widening with sympathy that bordered on apology. "I didn't mean to stir everything last time," she whispered. "You didn't," I said gently. "You recorded evidence. Life did the stirring." Her eyebrows lifted, then softened. "Different kind of headline now, isn't it?" I smiled. "Exactly the right kind." That line made it into her short column the next day, tucked beneath a photo of Lucy presenting her model, the caption reading, "Different kind of headline." Mara Hart, proud mother of scholarship winner. It was small, easily missable in the digital flood, yet for me, it rewrote months of chaos into a single sentence of grace. That night at home, Lucy placed the trophy beside our blue envelope, the Constellation bank card glinting under lamplight. "You think we'll ever stop talking about this project?" she teased. "Hopefully in a few Nobel Prizes," I said. She laughed, hugging me. "Deal." After she went to bed, I lingered by the dining table, now cleared of binders and evidence folders. It had become again what it was meant to be, just a table. I traced my fingers along the wood grain and realized how light my hands felt without paperwork weighing them down. Some fights end in noise. Ours ended in learning. Justice wasn't just an event. It had become a curriculum we'd somehow survived and aced. Through the window, the sky glimmered with new constellations. I caught my reflection there, no longer the frightened version cataloging losses, but a woman standing squarely in her own life again. And on the counter behind me, Lucy's award shimmered quietly, a small, transparent monument to what truth looks like when raised properly. The day Lucy's scholarship deposit arrived, I almost treated it like any other bank notification, just another number appearing in our rebuilt portal. But when I opened the message and saw her name listed as recipient, her essay title below it, Empathy and Algorithms, Teaching Machines, Morality, my chest filled with something that felt like weather clearing after years of steady rain. "Look who's funded," I called. Lucy raced downstairs, phone already buzzing with congratulations from classmates. "It's real?" she asked. "It's real," I said. "You can log in and see the balance yourself." She did, eyes widening as the numbers settled on screen. "That's almost exactly what he took," I smiled. "The universe has excellent accounting." She laughed, half amazed, half relieved. "So what now?" "Now," I said, "we decide what freedom costs, and what it earns." A week later, we sat in the same banker's office, sunlight streaming across the polished counter. Connie, the patient manager who'd witnessed our reclamation months earlier, greeted us with her usual calm efficiency. "Congratulations, Lucy," she said. "The scholarship office already transferred the funds. Shall we discuss how to manage it?" Lucy grinned. "Yes, please." Connie opened a file. "There's tuition coverage, a living stipend, and a technology allowance. You could tie it to your existing account, or you can open a separate trust under your name." Lucy glanced at me. "Separate sounds like independence." I laughed softly. Spoken like a future economist. We went through the paperwork, signature after signature, lines where responsibility replaced fear. At the bottom was a line reading "Account Purpose," an open space for an optional label. Lucy leaned on her elbows, thinking hard. "Can I name it?" Of course, Connie said. In deliberate looping script, Lucy wrote, "Freedom." When she handed the form back, Connie smiled knowingly. Perfect choice. Driving home, Lucy basked in the small silence between us, fiddling with the radio until she found an old song I used to hum while cooking, before everything. The lyrics floated through the car. She sang under her breath, turning it back into memory rather than ghost. At a red light, I studied her profile, the confidence in her posture, the maturity that most adults never quite achieve, and I realized the revenge in our story had quietly transformed into reclamation. Justice didn't roar. It exhaled. "You know," I said, "most people open accounts for safety. You created one for freedom. That's unusual." She thought about it, watching traffic move. Safety keeps you from falling. Freedom teaches you how to land. I nearly laughed out loud. "Where do you learn these lines?" "From you," she said simply. For a strange moment, the world blurred just slightly, tears caught in sunlight. Every line of this child's wisdom felt like interest paid on years of faith. When we got home, she tucked the new card, white with minimalist letters, beside the constellation one. "Saving and freedom," she said, stacking them like twin totems. Pretty good collection. The following weekend, we celebrated by repainting the front steps. The blue paint Daniel once promised to finish had long peeled away. Lucy dipped her brush into a new color, deep teal, and began broad, confident strokes. "It's brighter this way," she said. "Brighter lasts longer," I replied, though I wasn't really talking about paint. Neighbors waved as they passed. Some of them still whispered about that story, but the gossip no longer stung. We'd outlived the headline. Lucy looked up from her brush. "Mom, what's our next project?" I hesitated, living without waiting for the other shoe to drop. She nodded sagely. "Boring sounds wonderful." We laughed until paint splattered across our shoes, that laughter, the unguarded kind that returns after grief, felt like the final signature on a long treaty with life itself. That night, we cooked dinner together. Not the fancy celebratory kind, just comfort food. Between stirring sauces, Lucy asked, "Do you think Dad ever learned anything?" I paused. "Maybe. People don't always change the way we want, but they sometimes see what they lost." "So, forgiveness?" "Eventually," I said. "But forgiveness is freedom for us, not a favor for him." She nodded. "Then maybe that's what I'll teach the computers next. When to let go of old data." After dinner, she went upstairs to video call a friend. I handled dishes alone, the room filled with ordinary clatter. Nothing symbolic, nothing cinematic. Just life, right-sized again. When I finished, I sat by the kitchen window and looked out over our freshly painted steps glinting under the porch light. The teal caught the glow beautifully, a steady color, neither the darkness of before nor the sterile brightness of forgetting. In that glow, I realized we hadn't just rebuilt finances or trust. We'd created a kind of inheritance no balance sheet could ever record. Respect, resilience, and the quiet certainty that lies crumble faster than love endures. I thought back to that first day when the missing zero had shattered my world, how everything since had risen from that emptiness. We'd simply added meaning in place of numbers. Across the house, I heard Lucy's laughter drift down the hallway. Light and musical. Ordinary. Perfect. Before turning off the lights, I whispered, partly to myself, partly to the universe that had stubbornly kept score. Account closed. Freedom balance overflowing. Then I locked the door, slid both our cards, the blue and the white, into the drawer beside the old house keys, and for the first time in a long, long while, slept without fear of withdrawals.